I didn't want.
Fine, so we're gonna talk about Dinah today. Not me, but Dinah Yaakov.
We're going to talk about Dinah.
Not exactly. I mean, I do carry her name, but I don't think I was named after her. Just someone like the name Dinah and gave it to me. It happens when you're the last child and they run out of names.
You get the leftovers.
Your it gets named, basically. Or the kids. There's different stories. Some say it was older siblings, some say it was the aunt, whatever. Someone picked out my name.
It's a great name.
So, all right. So we all know the basic story of Dinah about Yaakov, but how many of us actually looked into it? I learned bits and pieces about Dinah in the past, but never really studied it in depth. But the truth is, the story of Dinah is really more the story of her parents and her siblings and of Dinah itself. It doesn't really talk about Dinah's characteristics as much as it talks about what happened to her and why. So we'll go into that. Anyways, so the name Dinah, Leah named her Dinah because she passed judgment on herself that she should not have any more boys, or that it comes from the word Dainu, din, die, enough that because all of Rachel's sisters cried out that they had enough boys and Rachel should have a boy. So it was Dinah instead of Yosef, and that's where she got her name. Dinah is one of the 3 women who's explicitly mentioned as one of the 70 souls that went down to Mitzrayim. Okay. So just a bit background information. All the tribes are born with twin sisters except for Yosef. And it could be that Dinah wasn't born with a twin sister. It could be that she was. It's unclear. Basically, they were all born with twin sisters for them to marry each other. The reason Yosef wasn't born with a twin sister because they were switched in utero, and therefore he didn't have a twin sister. Benjamin was born with 2 twin sisters for whatever reason. He was one of 3.
Wow, this is interesting.
But basically, Dinah had a very hard life. From the time she was a child, she was taken by Shechem either at age 6 or 8, depending on which medrash you read. And there are many different ideas as to why she was taken. Okay, so we're going to start. We're basically going to go in the order of the Pesukim here because there was no other way to do it. So we're going to start at the beginning of the story. So the Chasam Sofer brings down that because Yaakov delayed in fulfilling his neder. What was his neder? That he would give 10% of his earnings to Kadosh Baruch Hu when he got back from Laban's house. Now he's back already. He's settled. He hasn't fulfilled his neder. So he says that he was punished with Dinah being taken by Shechem. The Medrash also says this, and it says later on at the end that Hashem decided to tell him why he was being punished. Yaakov did not realize why he was going through so many sufferings, and Hashem finally revealed to him on the way to, when he told him to go down to Beis El, that he needs to fulfill his neder. Okay. Basically, we learned that, when you delay in fulfilling your obligation, whether it's giving mice or fulfilling a vow that you've taken, your books are opened up in Shemayim and your deeds are examined. It's not really something you want to have happen to you because you never know what the consequences will be. Mm-hmm. So I would be careful. We take neders, which we shouldn't be doing in any case, but if we do, we should be careful in making sure to fulfill them. The Chasam Sofer asked the question then, okay, so if Dinah was taken, just like Sarah Ramena was taken, why wasn't she granted the same protection that Sarah Ramena was granted? So he basically says that Dinah was not protected by the Malach because Shechem wasn't worthy of it. Shechem was useless, basically. Paro wasn't quite as useless, and therefore it wasn't just Sarah Ramena's merit that there was a Malach there, but it was also because Paro had some merits in being royalty and in doing things and bringing out a miracle, so to speak, that they were saved by Malach. Shechem had no such things happening to him, and therefore Dinah was not saved by Malach.
What's the door closed? Does it bother you?
No.
But why did Yaakov delay in repaying his neder? Like, why? He obviously he'd come back from Laban, he had plenty of earnings, but part of his neder was that he wanted it all to happen through natural means, and he did not feel that it happened. He felt that everything that had been happening to him was kind of on a supernatural level. We see the sheep were spotted or the goats, whatever, striped, they turned different colors, whatever. Lavan kept trying to change his wages, and it kept changing to go with whatever Lavan said. You know, whatever they agreed on, it would change. He didn't feel it was coming through natural means. And the whole thing with Asa, where they meet, Joseph and Asa tries to kill him, and he didn't feel like he was being protected naturally. So this is Hashem's way of showing him that, fine, you want to be protected naturally, your daughter's going to suffer the consequences, so to speak. And we're going to show you that everything that's been happening to you is through natural means. It's just on a higher level than what it is. Okay. Basically, this forced Yaakov to finally fulfill his neder because he saw that there was natural things happening to him, not just supernatural. To catch up, we are talking about why Dinah was taken by Shechem, and the Chasam Sofer brings down is because Yaakov did not fulfill that opportunity. He taken his 10% of his earnings, and part of that neder was that it had to come through about natural means, that he would be protected, and he would give 10% of his earnings to Hashem if he was protected from Lavan and everything else. But he wanted to be natural so that his marriage shouldn't be diminished. And because he didn't feel that was happening, he delayed in fulfilling his neder. Okay. Next thing, Rashi brings down on the pasuk that Yaakov hid Dinah from Esav and he was punished. So we know that when Esav and Yaakov met, Yaakov had split them up into camps and he hid Dinah inside the trunk, and Yosef stood in front of Rachel. Yaakov was punished for hiding Dinah because he could be that, she could have saved Esav, because she was a woman and the woman sets the tone in the house and all these things. Anyways. Rashi says Yaakov was punished for this, and the Chasam Sofer brings down on this idea from Rashi that because Yaakov said to Lavan, my righteousness will answer for me. This is in reference to when Yaakov was negotiating his pay with Lavan to leave Lavan's house. Remember, they constantly Lavan was changing Yaakov's wages, and Yaakov finally said, I want to leave. I want to take my wages and go take my wives, my children, and leave. Yaakov wasn't interested, so they're negotiating, and Lavan keeps changing. Anyways, basically, he's saying, my past stands in good faith for me. You've seen my actions. I haven't lied to you. You stand good faith. Therefore, Hashem says to him, you trust in your own righteousness, but not mine. By your life tomorrow, Dinah will go out and be taken. Yaakov basically felt safe in dealing with Lavan. He felt that his past would stand in good stead for him, and he felt safe. But when it comes to Esav, he doesn't show the same amount of faith. And this is more with Hashem. So he put too much faith in his own integrity and not that of HaKadosh Baruch, what HaKadosh Baruch could do for him. He basically said, I've done everything right, now just let me leave. And Hashem said, that's nice, you might have done everything right, but you forgot about me in this equation. Now I'm going to show you that there's consequences. Okay, so basically, remember, we don't really control our life. We might do things right, and we should be doing things right, but we have to remember to take Hashem into account. Okay, the next one's kind of strange, but there's a pasuk. It says that skipping here. Sorry, double-sided. All right. So back to Dinah being taken by Esav, and then Dinah was a child, so whatever happened to her wasn't because of her own avarice. This is something that we learned from the story of Dinah, that when something happens to a child, it tends to be more supernatural in nature. It is not because of something that they themselves did. It's not because of their avarice, because they're children. Children, we know, don't have consequences from their avarice. Not the same idea. Okay.
Even in halacha, if some kid breaks the window, goes on the top.
Exactly, it goes on the parents, not on them.
It doesn't on anybody. Sometimes be nice, you can pay for it, but when I say 10-year-old breaks the window, nobody has to pay except for you.
So the Shla Kodesh brings down the following idea, and it's a little esoteric. I'm going to try and explain it to the best of my ability, but it was an interesting idea, so we're going to do it anyway. The Avos kept the entire Torah except outside the land of Eretz Israel, which is why Yaakov got to marry sets, two sisters or two sets of sisters
Again, what did you say? They kept the entire Torah, but
outside of Eretz Yisrael.
Except for
When they were outside, they didn't keep they
okay.
Okay, so when they were in Eretz Yisrael, they kept everything. When they left, it's not that they're one on the book, but they were a little more free with it. Which is how Yaakov got to marry Rachel and Leah, Bilhah and Zilpah. Because we know you can't marry two sisters, but outside Eretz Yisrael, he said that he could do that. Okay. And yet, according to the Shulchan Aruch, it's considered a flaw on Yaakov's part. That a man such of great stature, like his, should not have married two sets of sisters or two sisters. It is unclear if Bilhah and Zilpah are full sisters. I believe that they are. My readings, my husband was not so sure about that. So
they were full sisters. They
Yes.
wasn't the same mother.
we know they were from the same father. It sounded to me from my readings in the Medrash that they were from the same mother as well, but unclear. So he married four sisters, basically. They're all from the same father, and he shouldn't have. So the Shulchan Aruch calls this the avak of an avera, the dust of an avera. So when Chazal later talks about the dust from the fight with the Malach of Esav, that it went up to Shemayim, went up to Kisei Kavod, it's also talking about this dust of the avera that he did, the avak of this avera from marrying sisters. And therefore, this brought about an indictment, a ruling against Yaakov, and he was therefore punished for it. It wasn't exactly like a trial. He wasn't prosecuted. There's no good way to explain it, but this is what happened to him. It was a kitruk.
Punished through Dinah.
Yes. And also to Ruvain messing with the beds. All this came about because of this marrying of the sisters, according to Shulchan Aruch. Right? And he brings down the following gematria. And the Malach changed Yaakov's name to Yisrael. We have Yud and Shin, which equals 310, which refers to 310 worlds of Olam Haba. Please don't ask me what this means, because
What did you miss?
There's-
310 what?
worlds in the next world,
Oh,
according to Shulchan Aruch.
okay.
Okay, Yud and Shin equals 310. Apparently, there's 310 levels of Olam Haba, worlds, or don't know exactly, very Kabbalistic. Yeah. All right, and then while Reish Aleph Lamed equals 231, which refers to the gate of the next world. Maybe there's 231 gates. Unclear exactly, but this is what it refers to. The Malach did not want Yaakov to get all this reward. He wasn't interested in Yaakov getting rewarded. Remember, this is the Malach of Esav. He's also known as the Ezahara, Malach Mavis. He's got a bunch of names. He wasn't interested in Yaakov getting reward. So it then comes and says that he damaged the word v'yashkachev, and he lay with, which refers to Dinah, and Shechem and Reuben messing with Yaakov's bed. Because Yaakov refers to the future, and therefore the Malach couldn't actually do anything to Yaakov in the present time. Because Yaakov himself didn't have control over, he had control over the present, but so the Malach couldn't hurt him. He beat him in the present. But in the future, the Malach could mess with things that were happening to Yaakov. And therefore, Dinah was taken by Shechem and laid with, and Reuven messed with the beds. He removed his father's bed from the tent of Bilhah and moved it to the tent of Leah. Okay? He messed with the beds. He didn't actually lay with Bilhah. And speaking of Bilhah, it does say very few things about Bilhah. One, that she took care of Yaakov in his old age, and that when Leah died, the Shekhinah, in theory, rested with Bilhah in her tent. And yet, when Rachel died, Yaakov moved his bed into Bilhah's tent. Okay, and Bilhah raised the children, took care of them. And when Yaakov was ill, the brothers sent Bilhah to tell Yosef that their father was dead. That's all it really says about Bilhah. And all it says about Zilpah is that she was very young, and that's what and it says that she conceived, not that she bore or that she bore and didn't conceive, because she was so small and so young that you didn't even notice when she had children. I wanted to do Bilhah and Zilpah, but there really isn't much about them, so this is what you get. Anyways,
How was that? They were
Bilhah and Zilpah weren't twins, they were sisters. And actually says Bilhah was older one and Zilpah was the younger. So he couldn't, right, the Malach couldn't influence Yaakov in the present, but he could influence him in the future, and therefore he brought about this thing that happened with Dinah and Shechem and Reuven and the bets. So I tried to figure out what we're supposed to understand from this Shalom Kodesh, because it's a very interesting but kind of out there idea. Really don't have an answer for you, just that things happen. Sometimes they're because of things that happened to us in our past. Sometimes, we have to take into account the cheshbon nefesh when we see things happening, and sometimes it's not an immediate reaction. It can, obviously take place in the future. It could pace years later. It could take place a month later. We don't know how things are weeded out and when things are going to happen. So when we do things, try to take into account what we want to happen in our lives.
And a bunch of things that he watched over the course of his life. Somebody did some terrible thing and he stayed there 40 years, 50 years. What happened?
Right.
I remember some of them.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know what our actions are gonna do. We don't know what's gonna happen in the future. We don't have prophecy. We don't have nevuah. We can't go to the prophet and say, "Why is this happening?" We don't have their own term. So we,
even things with fewer years, like in Megillah,
yeah,
it's like 9 years between
right.
party and the
Yes.
It's like, how are you supposed to make the connection? It's
Right.
like,
So we had to just kind of keep in mind throughout our lives that,
somebody is keeping
someone is keeping track. The Chavetz Chaim actually says that every word we speak and every action we do is being watched over and recorded by Malachim. He's speaking specifically in terms of Lashon Hara, but it kind of applies.
It's easier for us to understand it in our generation. Computers and
Things come back to you, they have recordings of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, of course.
Right. So, anyways, all right. So the Chasam Sofer talks about Yaakov and the fight with the Malach, the angel of Esau. And to me, it was a little more understandable than what the Shulchan Kodesh had to say, because the Shulchan Kodesh is kind of Kabbalistic and a little esoteric, but he was interesting. So we know that Yaakov was injured in the fight with Esau. He was injured in the nerve in his side. So we don't need to get a nasha because of that till this day. So
The sciatic, where was he injured? Sciatic nerve?
They call it the sciatic nerve. But I don't know if it's
yeah, they say it's the nerve that runs through the thigh, which would be sciatica, but
Well, I know, I just said, because you said, did you say?
Get a
Gave him a
nasha?
shake. And I was thinking, in Hebrew, they call it issue, or something like that. The sciatic, okay, good.
okay.
It's not this necessarily,
No,
Ben
no,
Yehuda took a lot of words and made them opposite or made them incomprehensible.
Yeah, I don't know that we know exactly which nerve it is in the body, but
Well,
basically,
anyway, it would be interesting to ask a shochet or a menaker
yeah,
where it is.
Rabbi Servetnik might know. He used to do stuff like
What
that.
is it?
Rabbi Servetnik used to- for slaughterhouses. So.
Right.
He wasn't a shochet, but he used to watch over them. So.
Fulani, yeah. Menaker, you know that family name, the Yiddish name Menaker, that's what their job was. Menaker was something just like a shochet. Menaker is somebody who took out the forbidden, like the Gita Nasha and the forbidden fats.
Okay, so according to Chasam Sofer, because he was injured in this fight with the angel of Esau, the following tragedies occurred after this damage was done to him. Because this damage was done to the family tree, not just to Yaakov, but to his whole family. Okay, and he takes this from the fact that Yaakov remained alone with the angel when he went back to pick up the last few jars. He went back alone. And he says he shouldn't have gone back alone. He shouldn't remain alone. This will cause him to fight with the angel, and therefore he was injured. So he says levado, and if we take the word levado and we take the initials, it say Dinah bas Leah. Take the first letter, right? You have Leah, Laman, Bat, Bayes, Dalin, Bub would be levado.
Oh, okay.
No,
It's a-
but it'd say Dinah bas Leah, as in Dinah went out. Dinah, the daughter of Leah, went out. We take the first letters, we formed the word levato, and he was alone. And he uses this to show that Dinah was damaged because of this incident. Yaakov should not have remained alone because the fact he remained alone made him vulnerable to Malach Esav, and Yaakov was on the road when he was told of his mother's death. He was on the way to Beis El, and he was also on the road when Rachel died. And Chasam Sofer says all this occurred because of the injury he got from the angel of Esav. Okay. The Chasam Sofer also says that it's not just because he remained alone, but it's because he delayed in paying his dinner and because he married two sisters. He basically brings it all together and says Yaakov sinned, and because he sinned, his family got punished. All right. Like I said at the beginning, the story of Dinah is really more the story of her family than the story of Dinah. It kind of explains why it happened to her, but it doesn't really go into Dinah herself.
Is this one yet? What's this person?
But the same thing, huh?
To say Dinah Basleya,
Yeah, there is some discussion of that.
it was improper. Well, you're gonna get to that when we get to Leah a little bit. All right, so the Miktam and Yahu brings down the following idea that Yaakov was punished for hiding Dinah from Esav. Why? Because there's an obligation to do chesed even with those who were wicked or evil. But he asks on this, the Gemara says that someone who marries their daughter to Amon Haaretz is like they tied her in front of a lion. So even more so with Esav. Esav wasn't necessarily Amon Haaretz, but he definitely wasn't a Talmud Chacham either. He was not interested in Yaakov's living
Also,
life.
you said that he didn't have Brit Milah.
Yes, but
So
no, I don't know
what-
that everybody agrees with that. That's one idea. But anyways, Miktameh doesn't bring down whether he had bris milah or not. It doesn't, according to Miktameh, it doesn't really matter. But basically, Dinah could have changed Esav, and Yaakov could have also through tefillah. He's bringing down the idea that Yaakov should use the power of his tefillah to daven for Esav, and he would not have had to hide Dinah away from Esav. And the two acts together would have changed Esav, or could have at least had the power to do. And he brings the following example, that a Kohen Gadol, when he dies, he atones for all the sins, even sins that normally wouldn't be atoned for by death. Kohen Gadol dies, that's it. And this is why the mother of the Kohen Gadol goes to cities of refuge and brings treats to those who are there, so they shouldn't daven for her son to die, rather than he should live, because they know that when he dies, they get to go free, their sins are atoned for. So she brings treats, and this is why, because tefillah and all these things and doing chesed for others can atone for all the sins. Basically, Rav Dasar is saying that Yaakov used midas hadin when he should have used midas chesed and used his power of tefillah to daven for Esav to change his ways. Now, we don't know why Yaakov didn't, because we weren't there, but Yaakov obviously felt that it wasn't the right thing to do, and he hid Dinah away in a box. So again, when Yaakov met Esav asked him, who are all these people? When Yaakov was punished for hiding Dinah in the box, we see that Yaakov answered, Esav, these are the children of God. And he used the word chanan, forgive. To your servant, Yaakov implied a blessing of chaim, grace, on his children, but because Dinah was hidden away in a box, she didn't get the blessing. So
That's also Miktam Me'Elia?
yes, I think so. But basically, just when you're giving brachos to your children, it's better if they're closer to you than hidden away. Obviously, there's discussions whether you can do it over the phone or not, but try and do it in person if at all possible. Doesn't mean that your brachos don't work. If they're not in person, just it's better to do
You
it.
have to wake up the sleeping baby.
No,
Go
you can go in and do it over their head.
Right.
I think there's also something spiritual that she was put in a box. I mean, there's
Yes.
another level of
There's
that,
another level.
that the children that we don't
See,
see
are
are
kind
going,
of
that might be, that Yaakov didn't relate to Dinah for some reason.
right.
Because what he brought was that you put them in a box, and that sometimes it's that particular child who really needs you the most. And so it was like, it's not like physically in a box, but we put children that are giving us problems in a box.
Right. So, yeah, don't put your children in a box. Make sure they're in front of you when you give them bracha, or that you're in front of them, if at all possible. It's not always possible, but if at all possible, try and do it when you can see them, because there is something to that. Is the bracha is more effective and more powerful when they're with you. Okay, then Yaakov built a mizbeach to offer korbanos to Hashem before Dinah was taken. Apparently, this happened right before. And Chasam Sofer finds this to be interesting. He learns from here that when the pasuk says, "Elokei Yisrael Kol," God of Israel, the Chasam Sofer says it's unclear who the he is in this pasuk. Basically, the way the pasuk reads, it says it's not just he's calling out to Kadosh Baruch Hu, but it sounds like he's calling himself God as well. It's a little strange, I know, but this is what Chasam Sofer brings down.
I didn't get it.
Because the way the pasuk reads, Kol Elokei Yisrael is calling out to God twice. The voice of God, Elokei Yisrael, and the God of Israel is how the pasuk is literally translated. Okay, so the Chasam Sofer says it's unclear who the he is. It sounds like Yaakov is calling himself God as well, according to Chasam Sofer. I don't know why he brings this, but according to the Medrash on this, Yaakov said to Hashem, "You are in the heavens and the God of heavens, while I'm on earth, and therefore I'm God of earth." It doesn't really make so much sense when we consider where Yaakov came from, but it's a Medrash. Chasam Sofer explains it this way. And therefore, Dinah was taken to show Yaakov that he's not God and to punish him. We'll see that there are people who later say that Yaakov conquered the Yetzer Hara when he fought the angel of Esav, and he won, so he had some spark of divinity in him, which could explain why it sounds like he's calling himself God of earth, because he had conquered the Yetzer Hara, he was going to live forever. As Yaakov, he had won his fight. Okay, Yaakov had beat the Yetzer Hara, and so he was on this higher level, and he felt that like he had more control now, more power. Really, he shouldn't have understood it that way, but he did. Okay. Now, when we talk about Dinah being taken, the pasuk actually uses the word gazela, which means thief, stealing, and this is one of the 7 Noahide laws. It shouldn't have been done. It's a little bit strange, though, that when we talk about the whole story of Dinah, it just says that Dinah was taken with gazela. It doesn't talk about her being raped, nothing. It uses the word gazela. So the Rambam brings up that because Dinah is called, Dinah being taken is called gazela, the people were punished with her theft. So what does that mean? When Yaakov fought with the Malach of Esav, who was also known as the Malach of Maves, and Sahara, and he won, it was like it became divine, as I said earlier. And this is the first time we see that Hashem is referred to as Elokei Yisrael. It is the first time that he's called God of Israel. Okay? And the reason for this, according to the Rambam, is because we are liable to sin. Hashem does not attach his name to us until after we die. And we see this, that the Yetzer Hara would have stayed away if the following things had not happened, according to this Rambam. If the brothers had not sold Yosef into slavery, the Yetzer Hara would have stayed conquered. And if we had not done the Chayda Egel, again, the Yetzer Hara would have stayed away. But because we succumbed to these tests, the Yetzer Hara came back into our lives. So that's according to the Rashi, that Hashem doesn't attach his name to us until after we die. And so Yaakov had some sort of divinity in him. But Yaakov, it says, because you have fought with Elohim, the divine, and with man, and you have won. Therefore, Shechem was definitely deserving of death for stealing Dinah, who had been a daughter of Yisrael. And Yisrael was considered to be immortal, to be divine. And that's why the name Yisrael forever lives on as the name of the nation. And she wasn't just the daughter of Yaakov, she was the daughter of Israel. But according to Gemara, if he managed to stay on this high level of being Israel, his children should have had the divinity as well. But he was punished for thinking himself to be like God. and therefore Shechem raped Dinah as though she was just the daughter of Yaakov and not the daughter of Israel. Do we understand that? Kind of, maybe. No.
I mean, I'll take it for what you say.
Basically,
More-
Shechem
more
was
ground
deserving
level-
of death.
Ground level as opposed to.
Yeah,
so-
Shechem was deserving of death for numerous reasons. One, it was against the 7 Noahide laws of nations to come together and formed after the model and said, we're not going to do these following things. So he shouldn't have stolen Dinah. Okay, and because Dinah was not just the daughter of Yaakov, but she was the daughter of Israel, he definitely was deserving of death just for that. But Hashem punished Yaakov through the raping of Dinah to show Yaakov, you might think you're so high and mighty, but really you're still man. And therefore Shechem raped Dinah as though she wasn't the daughter of divine, but just as she was the daughter of Yaakov. Better?
Yeah. I mean, we don't call him Israel.
No, we call him Yaakov.
We call him Yaakov. Continue to call him Yaakov. even
But
after
he is actually called Yisrael in the Torah. We see there's numerous times when he is called Yisrael after that.
we go back and
And it
forth.
goes back and forth. Because we see that there's a lot of at play
It's
here.
not so.
It's not so
yeah,
simple.
right.
Okay, now we get to what Robert and I were saying, that Dinah went out just like Leah. All right, so there are a few different ideas on this. Some say that she wanted to show off her beauty, and that's why she went out into the village, show off her beauty to the village girls. We know that Dinah is beautiful, just like everyone in Yaakov's household is beautiful, though I always understood that Dinah was considered to be more of a tomboy than a girly girl, because Yosef got that girly girl part from the switching and all that. Some Midrashim say that Shechem set the whole thing up. He sent out the girls to set up, play games and to draw her out. Sound of laughter and games. She was a child. Remember, she was 6. She was 8. She wanted to be with other girls. She wanted to play games. Maybe she shouldn't have, because she was daughter of Yaakov and should have been a higher level. But at the end of the day, she was still a child and she went out. They say that Shechem took her and he abducted her after she uncovered her arm. Now, I have no idea what that means. Chazal, yeah, Chazal basically says that we have to be careful with how we dress when we're outside, and they actually say specifically regarding jewelry that it should be worn for your husband to entice your husbands, not necessarily outside the home. Now, what you choose to do with that is up to you, but basically they're saying be careful with how you dress outside because you don't want to attract unwanted attention. So why does the verse say that Dinah went out, but say Dinah? It really should have said that Dinah went into the village, because her tents were outside the village. Like, it should have said that she went into. Where she left the tents, but she went into the village. She wasn't just going nowhere. She went into a village. It's like going into town to go do some shopping. Like, it's not unheard of. We do these things all the time. I actually heard Rabbi Wallerstein once say that Dinah basically went window shopping. And
In the Midvachov.
yes, he used Manhattan, but he was not a fan, basically. So we take from this that when someone does something that is considered improper, it is considered as they went out. And we learned this from Hilchos Shabbos, actually, because it says that when someone carries outside the area from the public domain to the private domain, we see this, or the opposite, from the private to the public. No, it's from the public to the private, actually. I had it opposite. My husband made me switch it. The actual halacha is that you're carrying from public to private.
Oh, really?
Yes. We see they've done a hotza'at to carry outside. So basically, Torah is giving us rules throughout our life on how to behave and what it expects from us. Now, again, we're living in a very different world than Dinah did. We're not in time to Tanakh, and we do obviously need to go into town or Mozikon or whatever. But when we do these things, we should be aware of our surroundings and who we're representing and how we want to look and act towards others. So Rashi brings down on this idea that Dinah went out. Should he treat our sister like a harlot? We cannot blame Leah. Dinah went out to see the daughters, and the Chasam Sofer explains on this pasuk that we cannot blame Leah, we cannot blame the victim at all. just because Dina says Dina went out, like Leah is not Leah's fault. And he basically said Leah is a Sadakis. And what are you thinking to even try and blame her? Because we see, as we learned when we talked about Leah, that Leah had Yisachar from going out. Her intentions were so pure that she got to have this man, this tribe who would sit and learn Torah. She got to have a Talmid Chacham from going out. It literally says, for it says Leah went out and said, "You would come to me," and God heard Leah. What does that mean? For she got her Leah and she gave birth to Yisachar. Well of Torah, those with wisdom, because God heard Leah went out, but she went out with such pure intentions. There was nothing
Where did she go? Where'd she
To
go?
greet
to
Yaakov.
greet
Yaakov.
Yaakov.
She
Remember,
didn't
she
go
heard
that
the
far,
donkey
but
bring. She left her tent so that Rachel shouldn't be embarrassed. She didn't have to take him out of Yaakov, out of
Oh,
Rachel's
right,
tent.
right, right.
She went out without the intent of the pleasures of this world. She was going out in Shemayim. She went out the same Shemayim. All she wanted was to be with her husband in a very pure manner. So our intentions matter when we go out. As we said earlier, when we have to go and do things, we have to go and do things. We live in a world where we have to go and do things, but we have to go and do them with the purest of intentions. So too did her daughter Dinah, according to the husband so far in this. Dinah went out with the intent of conquering her Yitzhar. She went out, L'Shem Shemayim, she wanted to, convert the other girls. She wanted to do good things. She wasn't going out just to play, according to that. She was going out because she was daughter of Yaakov. She had good thoughts, she had good intentions, but they weren't
What other
enough.
girl? I don't get it. There
She
were
went out.
many of them.
Yes, Shechem's, the villagers from
The
Shechem's
Shechem,
village,
the
that he brought
Shechem,
She's
them.
gonna go to Kibbutz.
With the Klanim? Yeah, okay.
It's family tradition.
And it said Banot, she wasn't gonna do it with the boys.
Yeah,
Just like they say.
all right. We see it says that Le'erot b'benot ha'aretz, and the initials there come to Havel Ruach Shalahem, like them to conquer, like the Midrash says, to see but not to be seen. She went out to see them. She didn't want to be seen. She went out with the purest of intentions here. But she wasn't on the level she thought she was, which is why, and also because of her parents, she was taken by Shechem. All right. So there is a little bit of guilt here because the breach in the fence calls to see. Basically, when I asked my husband to explain this to me, he basically said, when your fence falls down, you had a security company and the fence falls down. Okay, it's not entirely your fault that you got robbed, but it is a little bit your fault. You let, things weren't protected the way they should be. So Dinah wasn't protected the way she should have been. Whether that's because Leah went out or not, there was something there that drew her out and she wasn't protected the way she should have been. So she does take some of the blame, but the blame mostly lies with her father for not fulfilling his daughter. She trusted in the merit of Yaakov, which was not less than the merit of Avram, and his merit an angel saved Sarah from Paro. But as I said earlier, because Shechem was on such a low level, there was no angel there. And also, because Yaakov didn't trust in his own merit himself. He didn't want to use his merit. He wanted everything to be natural. He wasn't interested in supernatural. Avram didn't care. Avram saw angels all the time. Yaakov said, I don't want this for myself. I want to save my merits for, but I want to live a natural life. Dinah, on the other hand, was a little more like Avram and said, my grandmother was protected. I'll be protected too. Hashem's not going to let anything bad happen to me. Well, unfortunately, things did happen. So basically, we can't really blame the victim, and we should never ever go about blaming the victim because we don't really know why things happen to people. And if you want to sit down and do cheshbon nefesh when things happen to you, that's a good idea, but don't go around trying to assign blame to others, especially not to people who are struggling or have been injured or whatever. Don't assign blame to them. Okay, so Dinah's intentions were pure. She wanted to go out, do cure, conquer, answer her. She was trying to do what was right, but it didn't work for her, for whatever reason. So the Emek Dover asks, how is it that Yaakov remained silent after Dinah was taken? We see, most people would react very differently, especially like we look back at the story of Lot and his daughters, the offer milk and angry mom. People are like, what? You never do that to your daughters, right? And when we read this story of Lot and his daughter, somebody was saying, no, our fathers would never do that. That's not how a father acts. You don't offer up your own children to an angry mom. We're gonna rape them. So it basically comes to teach us that we don't get angry over something that we cannot change. What happened to Dinah had already happened. He couldn't change it. He wasn't going to go and get angry and start killing people because of what happened. He didn't feel that that was the right reaction. His brothers obviously felt differently, and their
Sons.
yes, his sons obviously felt differently. Shimon and Levi especially, and there are plenty of Pasukim who say that they were right in terms of halacha, and they were totally allowed to do what they did, but they cited a lot of reasons to it, and it's not because Dinah was raped that they were allowed to kill Shechem and the villagers. It has nothing to do with that, really. It has to do with their idol worship and the fact that they didn't keep the 7 Noahide laws. Okay, so you can get angry, but don't die for something that you cannot change. All right, yeah, like most people would have died before offering up their daughters to the angry mom. Yaakov's coming here to teach us it happened already. I can't go and change the past. I can change the future. I cannot change the past. I'm not going to die for something that happened in the past that I cannot change. All right, so now this is a little interesting. So Dinah, right, we know is daughter of Leah, and that Leah gave birth to her. Now, according to this idea, Reuven knew that Dinah was really conceived by Rachel, and therefore did not view her as a full-fledged sister, which is why he did not go out with Shimon and Levi to fight Dinah.
How did you know that?
He knew. And it says, then it brings down that he fought for Yosef the way Shimon and Levi fought for Dinah.
Right.
Because he viewed Yosef as a brother, full-fledged brother,
Interesting. Yeah.
and not as someone from a different mother, but
Who
as
said that? Where's that from?
I think it's Custom Silver, maybe.
Oh.
Not sure. I'll look it up. So now, I don't even think, how did Shimon and Levi take out an entire city and win? Okay, so yeah, they had a breast meal and maybe they were weak, but really they fought an entire city and won. There was 2 of them against hundreds, thousands. Did we ever ask that question? Like, how do they do it? So the Chasam Sofer says that the brothers came to the city secure, trusting the same narrative of Abraham, who fought off 4 kings. But Yaakov and his humility didn't think he was worthy of such miracles, and therefore he did not approve their actions. Instead, you have discomposed me. Basically, he was discombobulated. He was uncomfortable with what they did and felt that they were wrong. But the brothers responded, if we cannot trust in your merit, also Dinah should not have been able to trust in your merit. But and he will make her like a harlot, basically. They're saying, like, if Dinah isn't able to trust in your merit, she's become nothing. Like, she's become a harlot, basically, because of what Shechem did to her. Like, this is your fault, basically. But we rely on it, and therefore Dinah should be able to rely on it as well. While Dinah did rely on it, it didn't really work the way it did for her brothers, because Yaakov did not, so it did not protect her. So therefore the brothers must have also had their own merit. It wasn't just the merit of their forefathers and their father that helped them win over the city. It's because they were also in the right and they had their own merit. The brothers were actually very upset with what happened to Dinah, as we see from Shimon and Levi, but it wasn't just because Dinah was taken. They actually blamed themselves. They felt that if they'd been on a proper spiritual level, then Dinah would not have been taken to begin with. So there was a lot of cheshbon nefesh accounting going on here, and they were. It just says the brothers. It could have been specifically talking about Shimon and Levi, but it just says the brothers. So it doesn't specify which ones thought about this, but it basically says if they were on the correct level, then this should not have happened. So there was something happening. Yaakov's household at this time. He came back from Lavan after meeting with Esav. He's settling down. Things weren't going well for him. So I kind of asked, why did Shechem want Dinah so badly? So this is from the Orach Chaim, and it's very, very strange, but it's actually a really cool idea. So I brought it down anyway. He wanted to be part of Yaakov's family. He wanted the yichus. He wanted to have that connection. the Orach Chaim HaKadosh brings down the following very Kabbalistic idea. That all the neshamas are part of Adam and Rishon. Adam and Rishon was kind of like a tree, and they were all branches coming out of him. But some branches got stuck when Adam and Chava sinned, and therefore they went into someone who wasn't pure, whatever. It's a little weird. So basically, the Orach Chaim says that when Adam sinned, the Yetzer Hara took over and he took captives. And these captives were very special neshamas, and that they try and free themselves from evil by reaching perfection. And it kind of brings an example of Yafes Tahar, that really what is a Jewish soldier seeing? He's seeing a pure neshama. There's something there reaching out to him, and that's why he must have it. He brings the same idea a little bit by Shechem here. He brings down that Shechem had one of these neshamas inside of the neshama, and his neshama needs to bring out Rabbi Chanina ben Tardian, who was one of the 10 martyrs later on. But in order for that to happen, he needed to be with the purity of Yaakov's house, which is why he laid with Dinah. And we can see this from the pasuk, and this is the secret of Vik nafsho bedina. My spirit became attached to Dinah. The Kadosh Nefesh of Dinah became attached to the Kadosh Nefesh inside of Shechem, which is really Rabbi Chanina ben Tarya. The sages say the Kolas Yaakov, that is Rabbi Chanina ben Tarya, which is hinted at in Rechavas Yadayim, Reish Chet Tetz Yud, which stands for Rabbi Chanina ben Tarya. Right? I thought it was, my Rebbetzin actually told me about that, and I thought it was very interesting idea. So I made my husband look it up. He's like, I have no idea what this is saying, but here you go. So I still felt like, what's going on here? Why is Dinah taken? Why are we blaming Yaakov for everything that happened? Like, what happened to Dinah? Why is Dinah's life so miserable? Like, what in the world? So that McDever brings down that it was supernatural, and he uses this based on the Pali Medrash. When you want, you place into their hearts to love, and when you want, you place it into the hearts to hate. Love refers to the incident of Dinah, and hate refers to the incident of Yosef. Why?
I'm sorry.
Hate refers to the incident of Yosef. So why is it that he's using this to say this? Because we see immediately after Dinah was taken back from Shechem and brothers told Yosef, there was regret. They were like, what did we just do? So it wasn't a natural phenomenon that Shechem reached for Dinah. It was supernatural. It was like there was something in him. Hashem placed it in his heart to love Dinah, to want Dinah, to attach himself to Dinah. Same with the brothers selling Yosef. Hashem knew that Yosef had to go down to Mitzrayim, so this is the way he brought it about. Now, obviously, there's other reasons. Everyone has, as we said, there's a cheshbon and Hashem does on each person, so there's a reason why he chooses these people specifically to do this, but this is what it's bringing. Right, so we said earlier that the nations of the world Athmabel came together and they created the 7 Noachide laws, and they said, we're not going to do these following things which cause us loss.
They created them from what? The people?
They came together and said, we're not going to do these things. So yeah, the 7 Noachide
I
laws
always
were
wondered
brought
where they
down.
came from.
Remember, there was 4 of them. It was basically Noach and his sons. So when we say the nations of the world, we're basically saying Noach and his sons came together and said, we cannot do these things. And those sons went on to become each their own nations, and it continued. All right, so this is why Shechem was, worthy of death. And I kind of said that it includes the rape of children. Yosef did not agree with me, but I'm going to bring it anyways. My own explanation here. I say we see this from the story of Yitzchak and Rivka. Rivka was 3 when she married Yitzchak, but they didn't consummate marriage for 10 years until she was actually able to have children. 13 or 14 when they actually consummated the marriage. And lying with your daughters also. One of the reasons Aaron had to move after the story of Lot is because everyone was talking about what Lot did with his daughters. It was not considered to be acceptable. It was considered to be totally not okay. So I applied that also to even with children. Now there's no pasuk that corroborates what I just said, but I kind of forced it and said, we don't.
What did you say?
There's no pasuk that actually brings down that you can't be with a child.
Can't
Be with a child.
do it.
So, but I kind of forced it based on, how we got to where we are today and all the stories in Tanakh that we don't do these things. Right, so, but really, if we look at the incident, Yosef, it really must have been supernatural because his brothers were jealous. He was 17, so he got his father's attention more than them. They weren't children anymore themselves. What are they so jealous of this boy for? Because he's pretty, because he gets attention, because he has his dreams, like, what, he was
obviously
5?
the father's favorite.
Okay, but they're not children, they're not 5-year-olds to be fighting over their father's love. Their father loved them all, but so it was obviously very much something Hashem placed in their hearts at that moment that caused them to want to kill him and end up killing him instead. Right, and I said once that moment passed, their minds cleared and they regretted their actions. This is true by both Shechem and Yosef, his brothers. That once things cleared up and the moment passed, they
They
kind of.
already regretted, or later when they had trouble in Egypt.
Yeah, so that the Emek Dever brings that they regretted it after the moment passed. Right. So what happened to Dinah after Shechem? So there's a few different midrashim. One is that she married Shimon.
She
And
married Shimon.
yeah, and it says there that Shimon promised to marry her because Dinah did not want to leave the tent of Shechem. She said he was going to marry me. He was going to want me. I've been defiled. And Shimon said, "I will marry you. Do not worry." The other brother and sister, but different times. They married twin sisters all the time, so Shimon could have married Dinah. It also says there's a Gemara that says that she married Yaakov.
She married Yaakov?
And she married Yaakov.
Oh, that's a new one.
Right? And she was criticized for doing this because Yaakov wasn't considered to be one of the necessarily righteous uncircumcised. He fell somewhere between Esav and Shechem. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't perfectly imperfect either. He was a Benoni, basically. And it actually says that they use the following verses to show that she married Yaakov. That they were very angry because Nivlah was committed in Israel. And Yaakov said to her, "You speak as one of the Nivlaot would speak." Basically, so they used that verse that Yaakov spoke in Yaakov to his wife to say that he married Dinah. Because Dinah is basically saying that the brothers are basically saying that unspeakable acts were committed on the house of Israel. And Yaakov is basically saying you speak as someone who is unpious, who's done wrong things. And this pasuk that Yaakov says, when you speak as one of the unpious would speak, is in reference to when Yaakov's wife suggested cursing God, and then God would kill him and end the sufferings. And this was Yaakov's response. The commentators say in this that Dinah did not think the suffering would end. All of Yaakov's children died. He had a miserable life, and his wife apparently did as well. And Yaakov apparently thought the sufferings would end. And Dinah was like, "This is never ending. Just get it over with already." And we don't really want to take that route. We should actually probably more take the route of Yaakov, where we think sufferings aren't going to end and that there is a reason for that. Right, so Dinah had a daughter with Shechem, Osnat. The brothers wanted to kill Osnat because they didn't think she was Jewish. They went by the father. Yaakov saw it differently, and he rescued the child. He put a necklace around her that said she was in the house of Yaakov, and she was sent down to Egypt. And because there was no twin sister for Yosef to marry, she ended up marrying Osnat, daughter of Dinah. Osnat threw a necklace into the carriage that Yosef was riding by on, and this is how Yosef knew that she was Jewish and that he could marry her. And when I say Jewish, I mean Jewish in this sense that there was no real Judaism then, but they were all from the house of Yaakov. Really, I kind of thought that he married Osnat because Dinah really should have married Yosef because
She was kind of like his
twin sister, right? But she married Shimon and not Yosef, so he married her daughter instead. And therefore, Yosef got to have 2 tribes, right? Menashe and Ephraim become full-fledged tribes, and therefore,
Why
What's the
therefore?
therefore about it?
because he married Osnat's daughter of Dinah, and therefore Rachel ended up having 4 tribes. Just like the rest of the mothers, she got to have an equal share. All right, so what do we learn from Dinah's life? Tefillah. You didn't get it. Okay, all
But
the.
Leah had 6.
Leah had 6, but really, if we divided 12 by 4, each of them should have had 3, but this way Rachel also got to have a fair share. Instead of just having 2, she got to have 4 tribes because they came from Yosef, who is her son.
And Levi, we can't take out.
Yeah, we take away, right? Levi is not a tribe, he doesn't get in the land. Yosef becomes Menashe and Ephraim, he gets double portion, get 4 tribes coming from Rachel. I thought it was kind of.
We have 14 then, 13 tribes plus Levi is 14. No.
Yeah, we don't count Levi then when we're using Menashe and
Okay.
Ephraim.
But so Menashe and Ephraim, so why doesn't that become anyway 13 even without Levi?
It does.
Yeah.
No,
No,
because of Yosef.
Yosef instead of him. one
Instead of
the
Yosef,
sons
you
and
get
then
Menashe and Ephraim.
Yeah, how that works, yeah.
All right, but basically Rachel had 3 tribes, 4 tribes, however you want to look at it. She got to have an equal share.
Mhm.
So Tina's life kind of sucked, honestly. It really did. I could not find anything happy. Like there was just, her life was a hard life. One time she was a child.
She was part of the
Okay, so
first
she was,
family of the world.
yeah, so she was royalty, but she was still kidnapped and raped, and she was still put in a box, ignored by her father. You know, it wasn't an easy life, but Tefillah really can make a world of difference. If Yaakov had just davened for Esav, then maybe Dinah would not have had to go through these things. If he had fulfilled his vow, maybe she wouldn't have to go
Yaakov
through these
saved
things.
the granddaughter that he became.
Yeah.
the wife.
We learned we had to be careful with how we are acting in public and how we put ourselves on display when we're outside of our village, so to speak. When we go out into town, going out past our 4 walls, whatever, however you want to look at it, you got to be more careful.
There's a big thing all over the front page of the free paper yesterday about Rav Gershon, about girls not going to work in the,
Yeah, I heard it on the phone.
not going to work in the Misrad B'Tachon, other places, Misrad Mishpati, and I think things that they're looking for Haredi girls to work because they're very good work. The hashpah of being not there.
Okay, and yes, our actions can affect our children. As scary as it seems, what we do does affect the next generation, the generations to come, and we should be aware of this and take it into account. You know, because we do want to protect our children and do what's right for them, and yes, our actions can affect them in negative ways. And I'm not going around saying, you know, oh, this child has cancer because parents did this. That's not the point. The point is obviously we need to be careful with how we act. And we learn, obviously, as I said many times, that what happened to you was not her fault. When something weird happens to a child, it is not their fault. They do not get blamed. And we learn that sometimes something Tameh is taking out, something Tahar, Kedusha, non-Kedusha. Sometimes there's a reason why that person is reaching for that person, even though it doesn't seem to make any sense. We see something in that person, who knows, you know, there's something there. And we also see that just because one parent doesn't have yichus, such as Shem, doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the children from that togetherness. Obviously, we might have preferred that, you know, Dinah wasn't taken by Shem, but at the end of the day, we do get Osnat who marries Yosef, and we do get Menashe and Ephraim from this. So, and we see, not only did Osnat come from it, but Rabbi Chanina ben Tarda came from it. These were both, you know, Rabbi Chanina ben Tarda was one of the 10 martyrs. He was obviously a great man. So, Rabbi Chanina ben Tarda. So, you know, just because, you know, someone doesn't have the yichus you might think you want, doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the children or the next generations. You don't know what's going to come out of that later on. This was what I found in Dinah. Maybe Mrs. Kieran has something more to say from about it.
No, you covered
Jacobson.
a lot. You can listen to him. But